Anand, it's amazing to have you on the show.
Hey, Elle, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, let's dive right in. We have so many exciting things to talk about. So before we jump in, give us some context and help us understand, what is GoldCast for anyone that doesn't know? Keep us all on the same page.
Sure. So GoldCast now is a AI-powered video content platform that helps marketers basically create, amplify, and measure video content. So this is starting with heavily engaging webinars, podcasts, or customer interviews, and then using AI to repurpose and amplify that into a variety of different content that you can use across a bunch of channels to essentially reach out and engage with your audience.
I think this is such an exciting market to play in right now. I'm feeling like video is popping up more and more as the go-to tool for engagement. So super helpful context. And for this episode, the focus of today is managing stakeholders through a narrative shift and being that change agent. So we're going to start with a case study for the first segment of this show. Take us back to when GoldCast was making that transition from webinars and events to a true video platform. What was happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, so I got there in about June 2023. And so for anyone that doesn't know, GoldCast was born in probably May 2020. And so for the first 3 years or so, they've done a really good job building a presence and a name for themselves in the webinar space. And then shortly after I got there, we had launched a new product called Content Lab, which was all around repurposing and using AI to take long-form video content, i.e. webinars, and turn them into more assets and videos that you can use across different channels, as I mentioned earlier. And so this was a new play for us. Shortly after that, launching that, we made it into a standalone product, and we saw a lot of early traction and positive sentiment. This was something people were excited about. And it gave vindication to our founders that we needed to expand from just being a webinar tool into a larger video media play, which had always been in the back of their mind. So that's kind of the context of what was happening. And I'm happy to kind of walk through some of the other things that I went through if you want me to do that as well.
Yeah, sounds good. So as you kind of saw this early indication, or your founder saw this early indication that this is a place where we needed to be, then enter you as being the PMM lead on this new initiative. What was kind of your task at hand, and how did you first start to realize okay, this is something I need to focus on?
Yeah, so ultimately, the main thing, the founders had a very good sense that we needed to reposition our company, right? We no longer wanted to have sales calls where people came to the calls and be like, hey, we're looking for a webinar tool. That's still a huge use case that we serve and continue to serve, but we wanted to be known as something bigger than that. And so I was lucky enough where the founders, our CEO, gave me the trust to take on and lead this key initiatives with them, obviously, in support. And so what happened was really four things. One, it was trying to make a shift in the way that we the category that we position ourselves in. We're no longer going to be events or a virtual events or a webinar category. We want to be something a little bit larger than that. With that, we had to formally kind of update our overall strategic narrative to play a role in that story that we wanted to tell. And then from that came the ideas of restructuring pricing to make sure it aligned with our vision. And then probably the most important thing is to create internal alignment, right? To make sure everyone is consistently telling that story, especially the go-to-market teams, but just everyone in general within the organization needed to be on the same page and telling that same story out to the market.
Right, totally. And so as you were building the story and doing all that enablement and managing all those stakeholders, kind of give the reveal. What happened at the end of the story? What was the end result? Or maybe you're still kind of working on that end result, but what's some early indication of success that you saw?
Yeah, so in terms of what happened next, once I knew kind of what we needed to do, obviously I worked closely with the founders to pull out information from them of what's the story they believe in, what's the vision that they believe in, and that was the foundations of everything. And then I started running two kind of parallel customer interview, customer discovery projects. One was around what video meant to our customer, because we weren't sure does webinar and video go hand in hand, and we weren't sure, and that we were very internally sold on the idea of video, but we wanted to make sure it aligned with our customers and our audience, right? And so I didn't have a ton, maybe 7 or 8 conversations I held around that topic, and honestly I think half of them saw it as a relationship. Some of them did not see video and webinar as a thing that goes together. But half of those 50%, we're able to like connect the dots if we just talked a little bit about it, right? So it wasn't like a complete 100% vindication that video is the right choice, but I think we had enough kind of gut feel internally and enough kind of small signals from the customer conversations that we can move forward with that. And then the second kind of parallel track was talking to about 15, 20 folks with one of my founders and myself to see if the narrative that we had around like mindshare marketing really resonated. And we could tell from off the bat that really did resonate. So that was positive. And then from there, that's where we started building out collateral, making sure everyone in the team was enabled, and then update messaging everywhere. And so like to your point, it was not like, hey, it took a week and we're done, right? Like we are still working on this right now. Like we continue to iterate on our story. We're still making sure that everyone internally is still telling that story. I would say the initial few months of trying to get, especially the go-to-market teams, to change that story was a struggle. Like they were like they had things that were working. They liked their talk tracks. They liked their process, and we were like completely shifting and disrupting that, right? So that was difficult to do, but we've gotten there and we continue to work on that. But we've seen like improvements in our ACV as we've shifted from just being a webinar tool to a more end-to-end video content platform. We've seen like organically on LinkedIn and other places where people are starting to talk about like mindshare and being top of mind and how important that is. And I wouldn't say that's all because of us, but it's important that that story is being told out in the market. Again, when you are shifting categories and trying to tell a strategic narrative, it takes a long time. It's an ever-going thing, right? And so we're continuing to work at it, but we've seen signals that we've definitely made a lot of progress over the last year and a half.
Yeah, and it could be so easy to want to give up when you don't see the immediate results. But it sounds like you had some signals along the way that showed you that you were on the right track, right? Like earlier on, you mentioned that you had the conversations with customers and a lot of your vision was resonating. And then even later after launching and going to market, you saw that the increase in ACV. So that's all such good stuff. And I want to get into it a little deeper in terms of what an actual playbook for you looked like. So let's think about this from this perspective. Let's say that I'm a PMM who's leading a big narrative shift, something totally different, whether it's shifting markets or shifting to a platform message or whatever it may be. I've got all these stakeholders that I need to manage, and I have to be that change agent. So kind of give us a quick summary of like what your playbook looks like, maybe from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's all about alignment or just trust and belief from whether it's the founders, if you're a small organization, or if you're a larger organization, like key leaders and stakeholders. Like if they do not believe in the need to make this kind of shift and switch, it doesn't matter how much effort, how great the story is, how great the category is, it won't matter, right? So I've been in organizations where I've proposed a shift in like how we position ourselves and the story that we tell. And everyone loves it. They're all on board, but they're not willing to put in the extra effort to bring it to life, both internally and championing internally with the rest of the company, but as well as externally, right? And so like, it was the best story. It was a great story. Everyone loved it, but it just didn't go anywhere, right? So it all starts with getting founder, CEO, key leadership buy-in. And by buy-in, it doesn't mean like how they're bought into like us doing the project. It means they're bought in to live and breathe this change, right? And they're participating and they're advocating for it internally and externally. So that was definitely like a big thing. And then it's really about seeing like how do we like try to shift from one thing to a complete 180 to a whole different thing. It's a lot of effort. Like I wouldn't recommend that, right? So like it's about how do you bridge the gaps to where you want to go? Hopefully it's built off of the vision. And the vision is not a complete 180 of what you are, right? So for us, it was from webinars to video, and there was a ladder, there was a bridge that we could make, right? And so it's about how do we make sure that we are telling that story and extending that story a little bit versus completely changing it. And then it's like, make sure that you're running research and custom conversations, make sure it resonates, it lands, and then it all goes into the enablement piece and having a strong drumbeat of continuing to tell this story, especially internally. Like it's easy for us to do like spend 3 weeks on enablement with the sales team, give them a new deck and do certifications. And then a month later, they're back using the old stuff again, right? And so how do you continue to have repetition?
Right, exactly. Because as we've learned through psychological research, change is scary and it's frustrating, and it's something we have to work on in order to see that progress. And you said it with how long that that it has taken, and you're still working on it. And you're seeing some progress, but it just takes time and effort. So now what I want to do is take your playbook and let's break it down and focus on each, I don't know, step, if you will. And maybe they're not happening necessarily in chronological order. Some things are probably happening in parallel, so totally get that. But starting with the first step, right? You talked about getting founders or the C-suite on board, that executive sponsorship. When you had to do that with GoldCast, what did that look like in practice?
Yeah, so in terms of getting them on board and kind of aligned, it was a positive situation where it wasn't me going to them saying, "Hey, we need to make this switch." It was them saying, "We're seeing signals, right, from the launch of this new content lab thing where we need to adjust how we think of how the market thinks of us," right? They had already, from the beginning, had this idea of like media platform in the back of their minds, right? They just hadn't brought it to life yet. And it was probably a longer term vision. And I think it got accelerated. I know it got accelerated based on that launch and seeing how much people like really resonated with it. And so like the executive sponsorship was there because they believed in the switch. Then it all became about like keeping them always on the conversation. It wasn't like, hey, we had one conversation and then we went away and I came back with stuff. It's keeping them involved throughout the whole thing. Like I had multiple conversations to understand like what their vision was, what's the story that we're telling. I'm fortunate enough where our founders in a GoldCast it's about 150 people, so not like a huge company, right? But we're scaling. But like our founders have a very good strong pulse on what's happening in the market. They have a lot of conversations with VPs in marketing, CMOs, and customers, and so like understanding what they're seeing. And I was able to have multiple conversations. It wasn't just one, it was weeks of just having that continuous conversation, coming back with the story or a potential like category, getting their thoughts and feedback on it, iterating on it. So it took a few weeks to finally get to a place where they felt comfortable and they felt confident in what kind of the package product was there.
Yeah, so that is very lucky to have, by the way, to come into a situation where the CEO or the founders or the C-suite is initiating the change, or, you know, you're starting off with them being on board with the change. So let's say, you know, I've got my CEO on board, or yes, maybe they initiated the idea and now I need to move on to step 2. I know you talked about making, I don't know if it was like making a plan, but it was like looking at where you want to go and where you are today. So it sounds like kind of like a benchmark maybe. So tell us more about what that step is all about.
Yeah, for there, it's like, again, there was this whole idea of media platform, right? And we ended up not going that direction. Maybe that is somewhere we end up 5 years from now, right? But we knew that wasn't the next stepping stone as an organization. What was the next stepping stone is the fact that we were able to create all these kind of derivative video content from long form, initially from webinars, but now from other long form video as well. And so that's why we felt video was the right next step. It was the next stepping stone to potential what this larger vision is going to be 5 years from now. And for us, it was about making sure that we weren't alienating our existing like market and customer base, who have come to know us for being around webinars and virtual events. So if we went hard to the market with like video content, right? Like would that alienate what people thought of GoldCast? And so that's why I mentioned earlier, we ran all these conversations to see like, does video and webinars, are people able to connect the dots? And we felt enough confidence that they could. But we also decided like if we truly wanted to make a shift in how people thought of us, we would have to kind of shake the boat a little bit, right? Like when you come to our website, we talk about video content and video. We don't talk about webinars as like we do, but that's not up front and center, right? And so
right. It's a use case, but it's not, yeah.
Correct. It's a use case. So it may feel uncomfortable, especially feels uncomfortable for the sales team and other folks who are still like their main thing they're selling is still webinars. People that come to our door still, they're like, oh, we need a new webinar tool, right? And so like, but we are pitching them a video content platform. So it's like, you know, what people are coming from, what we're pitching it's sometimes a little off, but then once you like start telling the story, you can connect the dots. And so like that was really the extension that we had to make and help people feel comfortable with making that extension.
Right. It's not like you're starting out with, hey, I know you came to us for a webinar platform conversation. Now I want to talk to you about, you know, retail point of sale. Like it's not some completely far off thing. Right. Okay. Okay. So here you are. You've got the CEO or whatever C-suite on board. You as an active participant, you've confirmed and validated that like, okay, people can connect the dots. This isn't a crazy, it's a natural shift, right? From where we want to go. So what's step 3? What do you do next?
I mean, so we've done the validation, right? And the main thing is, like I said, we talked to multiple customers. I think then it's like trying to bring that to life. And ultimately what that means is the main kind of true north of this is like everyone is singing the same song, right? Everyone's traveling in the same direction. I've been in organizations where it felt like everyone was traveling, but traveling in different directions, right? And so like that doesn't really get you to a destination. It just gets everyone somewhere, right? And so that was like the main thing. And so like we had to figure out like what our enablement plan was there. And more importantly about not than just enabling people, it was getting the company on board with this shift. Like I said, it was, and the reason you and I kind of connected is because I had this LinkedIn post about how this was one of my most favorite launches because it caused a lot of like friction internally, right? And that's what it was, is like, again, when people are used to certain ways of doing things, if they're comfortable in the talk tracks and the processes and like the differentiators that they talk about, and we are throwing like a landmine in that, shifting how they do it, it takes a lot of like effort to like build trust, like, hey, we need to do this, let's do this. And so it was ongoing conversations with the sales team, getting their feedback on things. I would tap in our founders or our CEO and be like, hey, I need you to come to this meeting and you tell them your point of view on this versus me trying to enable them on this, because it's different coming from our CEO versus me, this product marketer who just joined the company 3 months ago, et cetera.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I can totally imagine that being really challenging. I could, for me, I have a framework that I use to be able to produce my podcast at a high quality. And if someone came in here and said, we're changing that, we're doing a big shift, you're no longer doing this framework that, you can do at the back of your hand now. You have to do this new thing, then have to learn something new. It's effort, as you pointed out. So it takes, trust and conversations and progress and working in order to get there. So I want to hear a little bit more about it. You started to mention it, right? Like this enablement plan and how you maybe used or leveraged your your executive sponsor, whether that's, the founder or C-suite or some super senior person. How did you leverage their voice? And you mentioned already, like bringing them in on some sales team conversations. Like, is there anything else that you did? And did you do those more like ad hoc, or was it kind of like very strategic, like part of your enablement plan?
It was a bit of both. So there were times where like we had a company kickoff, and that was strategically and intentional. Like we were going to have our CEO and our founder talk through, this is our new narrative, this is how we're going to position ourselves, here's kind of our vision as a company. And like, so that was purposeful, right? Like to the whole company, this is how we're going to do things moving forward. And it came from the top, right? And then we broke off from that where we had individual sessions. But even that, like leading up to that company kickoff, I had separate sessions with each functional team. So it wasn't like the first time they heard it was from the CEO. The conversation that came from the CEO at the kickoff was more validation that, yes, this is actually important. Like, AP came and talked to us about it. And at the conversations, I'd ask them like what they need to help bring this to life in their team and in their workflows. But now they got validation a few weeks later from our CEO that this is a priority. This is important. It's coming from him, right? So that was like a strategic decision. And then there were times where like, especially with like go-to-market teams where like, hey, we're pitching and showing off this new sales deck, and there's some concerns about like how much we're talking about mind share and video and not going straight to the point of like why our webinar solution is better and things like that, right? And so for those conversations, I would take the feedback, I would understand where the concerns were, and then I'd go back to our founders and say, look, here's where the concerns are. I think it's important for you, one or you or both of you, to come to the next meeting and share your opinions and share what your perspective and your responses to that. Because again, it's important for them, the go-to-market teams, to feel trust from the founders that they hear this feedback, they hear this concern, but this is why we're going in this direction. And this is why it's important that we all tell this story.
Yeah. So I've had experience where, and I saw this at Twilio, I saw it at Cisco, where I've had sales salespeople come back to me with feedback about, a sales deck, for example, and they say, this is too much vision. My customers just want to hear what our product can do and why they should buy it, what the benefits are, and why it's better than anyone else. And I get that feedback of too much vision. I don't want any of that. It sounds like maybe you saw that sometimes. And I'm curious, like, is your go-to, like, what do you do? Like, do you still keep that vision part in there? It sounds like you did. And you just got basically your executive sponsor to be like, sorry, we're keeping it in.
Yeah. Yeah. This is not a uncommon, like I felt this in multiple places that I've gone, and we've tried to make this whole like narrative thing like really catch on, right? If you look at like Andy Raskin or in some of those other kind of folks who talk about narrative, like there's like 5 to 8 to 9 slides that they suggest you have in your deck, right? That's a lot of slides for a sales rep or anyone on the CX side to even go through, right? And so in terms of like how do we kind of approach this especially once we got feedback, I think one thing was to figure out, are there ways to skim down the number of slides? Because I think it's not even the story, because there could be 10 slides and I would record a loom of me doing that story and it would take me a few minutes, right? But it was the sheer volume of like, hey, I have 10 slides I have to get through before I could even get to like the product stuff, right? So that seems daunting. And so we look for opportunities where we can cut down the number of slides, maybe like combine things or take the talk track for one and still have it sit on top of another slide. And then I worked with like our sales leader as well as our founders to figure out like out of these whatever number of slides there are, which ones are like pivotal, which ones have to be like addressed in the conversation. And so like we gave people options, like they could skip things, right? But there were certain things they had to bring up and mention. It didn't have to be them showing the slide, but they had to voice it over, right? They had to tell that and connect that story. And so yeah, that's kind of how we approached it. Ultimately, to your point, at the end of the day, the founder, the CEOs, they came in and said, look, this change is important for us as we grow our business. Like if we are just seen as a webinar tool for the next 5 years, and it's not going to support the growth that we want as a company, we have to do this, right? So as much as like this back and forth, or is this the right decision? It was a decision from the top down, like this is important for the company and we have to all play a role in that.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I love being able to use that executive sponsor when needed. Like sometimes you just need bring in the big guns. Other ways that I personally have overcome that is I had this one like really incredible salesperson at Twilio, and together we came together and we talked through like, okay, how could we take this big story vision and make it more of like a conversation with the customer and less of like me talking at you and telling you the vision. And I feel like it worked really well, but it wasn't easily trainable, like only really good, really seasoned experienced reps could pull that off. But some of the more junior reps, I think like had a harder time. So, it's tough. It's tough to like try to get that into a sales deck, the vision part,
Correct. Even for us, like I followed the typical advice of like, hey, pick out 1 or 2 salespeople to run this with first, just to get validation and proof points. Like 1 or 2 respected sales folks that have done well in their time at GoldCast. I did that. They enjoyed, like they thought it resonated, but like it was still hard to build like in overall like consensus. Like this is the right direction to go. Even in the deck itself, like I pinpointed, I had like this kind of companion deck that would show each slide. It would talk about, here's some discovery questions to ask. Here's some things. Like, it's funny because in the conversations that we had with customers around the narrative, we had talked to a CMO who brought this up. So she sent me her companion deck that she's used in the past. And so I stole it from her. So I appreciate it. Appreciate that. Her name was Deb Wolf. So shout out to her. But yeah, that was like something I created. But to your point of like conversation, I made sure like we had like, not on every slide, but like on key slides, like here's a great trigger for a conversation that can open up more learning and having back and forth. But again, it's like a big change and a big shift to make. So even if you have that conversational aspects to it, like it does take a lot of repetition for someone to really start building that into their workflow.
Yeah. What a great tip. PMMs, take note. Okay, so you got this like massive enablement process that I'm sure took forever. Once you're probably still working on it, but once you feel like you have a strong handle on the enablement piece, what's the last step of your playbook?
So now you have the enablement. Now it's like obviously your internal teams and your go-to-market teams are hopefully telling that same story, or at least some version of that story that you continue to work with them on. Now it's also about just making sure you're covering all the other channels too as an organization, right? So that really comes down to the marketing team for the most part. Are we telling the right story and are we clearly articulating our position on our website, on review sites, on our own social channels? And so just making sure that we have alignment across that. Even from a product marketing perspective, like I make sure as a team that we don't do it 100% perfectly, but every release that we have, is there an opportunity to tie that story into that small, even if it's a tier 3, like small release, it's just a small release note that goes somewhere on the website, right? Like, how do we make sure we bake in that story so we continuously have a drumbeat of what we're saying? From a content perspective, our content team took this full messaging framework document I had, and they're building that story around mindshare marketing and video content and other topics that are relevant. We have like a thought leadership program going where our CMO and our founders are joining podcasts and doing speaking sessions to continue to kind of have a drumbeat in that voice in the market. So became more of the market voice that we had to start building out as well.
Yeah. So you're kind of leading into what my next question was going to be is, how did this look like from the customer's perspective? It sounds like you activated a number of channels and you talked about, it sounds like media pitching and all that sort of things. Are there any like pieces of content or like, I guess like the messaging that really stood out for you in terms of how this may have looked like for a customer and what you feel like was a really strong success with getting this new narrative in front of the customer?
I wouldn't say it was a success right away. It took a little bit of effort to figure out what the right approach was with existing customers. We were at MayCon last year, which is a large like marketing AI conference. And that's actually where we had been talking about video a lot. And a lot of people thought of video in different ways, like motion graphics. And that's where we added the content word to it. So video content to make it more relative to what we were specifically supporting with. But it was at that event where I came to realize like we had been championing this whole content lab and content repurposing and video repurposing thing so much, and we still had customers who had no idea that that thing was available to them, right? And so like it's like the product marketing dilemma of like no matter how much you shout from the rooftops, like people still will not hear, right? Still fall on deaf ears. So what ended up working well so far, and I wouldn't say it's perfect yet, right? But what's worked well so far is one, we've tried to build a better kind of like relationship with CS so that they help champion a lot of this stuff when they're having customer conversations, right? And a big resource that has played a role in that is that we've started building out these things called playbooks. So if you go to our website, we have a whole section around playbooks where it's partially customer stories and partially our own internal stories of how we're using our own platform for different things. So like we're recording a customer interview, and then we're taking that customer interview and creating a clip and using our agentic editor to make it like really engaging, and then we put that into an ad, and like it's a full like 3-4 step kind of playbook. It's been great, and the CS team like loves it. They're using that in their conversations, and so maybe it's not as like a broad thing. Like we do put it on social and stuff like that, but it's even in one-on-one conversations, it's allowing the CS team to have a more effective way of talking about how you can expand your usage of our platform.
I love that. Yeah. And a really great way to help customers get started with, I guess, just diving deep into your new narrative and your new offerings. So I love that. That's great. Okay. So I want to summarize what I think I've heard today for what your playbook, not to confuse with the playbook you're giving your customers, the playbook we're giving to PMMs. What you did, I think, to pursue this big narrative shift, you got executive sponsorship, or maybe it's their priority that they've given you. You've got this, what it sounds like establishing a point of view on where you are now and where you want to be and how you're going to get to where you want to be. Making sure that it's an easy shift, right? Not like a 180. You validated that with customers, and then you did the big enablement push with the sales team and maybe the rest of the company too. And then you had that drumbeat where you partnered with the marketing team and you made sure that this story got out into all the channels and all the places. Does that capture everything? Let me know if I missed anything.
No, that's a good summary of like the steps it takes. Obviously, there's a lot of nuances to it for every organization, but like those are generally like the process that we follow to get to this point. It's still a work in progress, right? But like we've definitely made a lot of movement, and we've come a long way from where it was just a few years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm really curious. If you were to do this again from the start, how would you use AI? Or maybe you did use AI, but what part of AI would you leverage to accelerate or increase the efficiency of all the product marketing aspects of this entire initiative? Or would you not use it at all, and why?
Yeah, I would definitely use that. I don't remember if I used it too much when we were doing this about, a year and a half, 2 years ago. I probably use it a little bit, but like some areas where I could definitely see it being valuable is synthesizing a lot of the conversations, like the founder conversations, trying to take all those. Again, it wasn't just one conversation, it was multiple conversations. So I could take transcripts and try to pull out the key nuggets in terms of like what matters to them, what's the vision. The customer conversations I was having, are the key themes, or like, hey, I talked to 8 people about the idea of video. What were some of their concerns? Where was some of the kind of lack of clarity in what video means to them? Like it would have been a good way to just like summarize and take all those nuggets away. And then I think after that point, I'm sure there's a way you can leverage AI to help build out like the narrative and stuff like that. I think you could definitely use it to support, but also you have to just be very careful. Like it has to be as authentic to the way that you want to speak as a company. What's important to the founders and the executives themselves. The other thing, like I don't know how I would do this, but I think it would be very important and very effective is to have like, whether it's a custom GPT or whatever tool you're using, a kind of like a hub where the go-to-market or internal teams can go to ask questions around this narrative, and it can help kind of enable them, right? And so I think that would be, I can still do that, right? It could still be very useful even now. So I think that could be a very fun way to leverage AI to help with the enablement piece across the company.
I'm actually seeing that a lot. Like in some of these conversations that I've had with product marketers, I'm seeing like it's like a go-to-market engineer sort of who like builds these, or sometimes PMM can do it too, but like we'll build these custom GPTs like for enablement, or build out an agent with quotes for PMMs.
I built one recently where our CS team can tap into it, and it pulls all the playbooks, customer quotes, case studies. And so if like, hey, we have this customer who wants to do a little bit more of this, can you help me? And it'll pull all the right content for the CS to use with that customer. So
that
there's so
cool.
many great ways to use AI. It's just there's probably an endless way of using it. So it's just trying to figure out where do you have the most gaps that you want to help.
I know. I love that. Yeah. Likewise. Okay. So before we move on to the next segment of our show, I have to ask, if you were to give a PMM one piece of advice who's embarking on this like big narrative shift and stakeholder management initiative, what's like one, maybe they're nervous about the pushback. Like what's one piece of advice that you would give?
I might cheat and give two pieces of advice here.
Good.
One is just like if it doesn't feel like the leadership team is kind of demanding this and pushing for it, be skeptical about how much effort you're going to put into it. Because again, I've gone through this process, done a lot of effort. Everyone loves the output, but then nothing happens with it, right? And so it just becomes wasted effort, which is unfortunate. But if you are doing it correctly, and if the leadership team is like really prioritizing this and pushing this, it is going to be a bumpy ride. Like I mentioned, there are uncomfortable conversations. Everyone has concerns. Change management is a very difficult thing for people to deal with. So just like have empathy, take the feedback. Like there were times where like I got feedback from CX or sales, and like, they were not for something, and kind of stings a little bit because you put so much effort in the work, and you're like, they don't know what they're talking about. But if you like take a step back, you realize like they're coming from a place where they are talking to prospects, they're talking to customers on the day to day. Like they have a very important view into this, right? And so like it allowed me to like rethink things. And it doesn't mean that I take every piece of feedback and operationalize it, right? But there are things that can really help you do better. And sometimes you just have to put your ego aside and be like, you know what, that's a very good point. I'm gonna make an adjustment here.
Yeah, I think that's really smart piece of feedback, because when you think about it, as much time and effort as we as product marketers spend creating the narrative, for us, we're not like speaking it every single day until the narrative changes, which could be years. And those salespeople every single day. So I agree. Definitely want to bring those guys along for the ride and make them feel like
Correct.
their feedback is valuable. Okay, thank you so much, Anand, for walking us through that incredible case study. Now I would like to move on to the next segment of our show. It is the messaging critique. So this is where we as product marketing experts get to analyze real world messaging. But you, as the guest of my show, get to pick the company. So before we get started, I want to share the ground rules for everyone who may be new to this. So first, you're going to tell me, you obviously tell us what the company is and who their target audience is and what they do and all that. You're going to tell us something that you're loving about the messaging, like what's working, what's resonating, and why. And then you're going to tell us something that you wish the PMM would have considered when they were building the messaging or bringing it to market. And then finally, we're going to do a fun brainstorm and iterate a little bit and give that PMM some ideas on what they can do with the messaging, maybe some creative content or a campaign or something.
Cool.
Yeah. So without further ado, what is the company we are critiquing today?
I wanted to go. I'm in B2B, so I want to go kind of opposite of that. So I picked a B2C company, which is Remarkable, a product that I use and enjoy using. So I figured let's go with Remarkable.
I love it. Okay, so for anyone following along, we're looking at remarkable.com. So tell us, what do they do? Who are they?
So they are a digital kind of notebook. The reason why I use them is when I used to take notes, I used to have like 5 different notebooks I'd go through every couple of months, and it was getting too much to handle. And so this is a digital version of having a notebook, and so it just made things a lot easier and cleaner to manage. I don't know exactly who they market to. To me, it feels like it's probably like working professionals, probably more tech-forward working professionals. Looking at their website, it feels like very like techie type of people by the way the visuals are and the way that they're dressed, etc. But
yes,
I would
true.
say like working professionals and tech-forward working professionals.
Got it. Okay, and now walk us through their messaging. What are you seeing, I guess above the fold on their website that's popping out at you?
Yeah, so for me, this was interesting because again, coming in the B2B world, we always talk about like the high level value, but you see in B2C where they're usually kind of sometimes like you see with Apple highlight the recent innovation or recent product that they launch, which it seems like this is what Remarkable is doing with their Pro Move product. The messaging felt kind of weird to me, like be there with like the big thing that stands out, which, if you don't really have too much context on Remarkable, it may not make a lot of sense, but like, once you see the image and stuff, you realize it's like a more portable notebook that you can take places with you. Which for me as a buyer probably isn't as relevant. I work from home. I sit in my desk almost every day, right? So like this product specifically is not relevant for me. But obviously that's something that's the new thing that they're pushing.
It does. I am getting very Apple inspired vibes.
Yeah.
Not necessarily from, obviously Apple's very like sleek. They have a very distinct aesthetic. Not from that perspective, but exactly to your point, like the just the way that they are. It looks like advertising the new product. They have a watch the event.
Yeah.
So they made an
but
event.
Even that, at first, like, I mean, I work for GoldCast, which does a lot of virtual events, and we cosplay. So I kind of got what they meant by that, but like, there was nothing around that context. So there was a launch event that they announced this thing in, right? So that was a bit confusing to me at first.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was frankly confused when I first pulled up their website. I'm like, okay, something about notes, but like it kind of like, I didn't really, like, I thought it was an app, to be honest. Like, I'm like, oh, I didn't realize until like I continued to scroll. I'm like, oh, it's like an actual product.
Yeah.
So tell me more.
Like what's interesting there is like I have a Remarkable, so my context is different coming to this page, right, versus yours, right? So like I know what they do generally, so I knew this is a different version, a different model of a digital notebook, but you had less context, so you took it as an app, right? So it's interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so what are you loving about their messaging? What's working?
So a couple of things that I do like it's probably less messaging, more visuals. Like if you scroll down a little bit after the hero, like they have really great like visuals of their product, right? Like people have their notes written down, and so like to me this is just like makes it more real. Like this is what you do with this product, right? Kind of thing. And as again, maybe the context is different, but as someone that uses this every day, I can relate to this. But there was a couple of things that stood out to me. One is like social proof is like a big thing in any product marketing or product kind of, whether B2C or B2B.
Yeah.
But like in B2C, like I think it is probably more relevant to have like these publications that really champion your product right out in the world, right? And they have really great quotes from it. So it helps build that trust. It's less about where in B2B, it's like these logos use us.
Yes.
In B2C, it's like these publications who know what they're talking about are saying incredible things about our solution, right? And so that felt like it was positive. But the part that really, I think, there's just one line that really stood out to me. It says, everything you love about paper in a digital notebook. Because to me, it feels like a lot of people that do end up going, like especially new customers, they take notes. They write down notes. They like writing down notes. They don't want to type it out on their computer, etc. Right? And so, like I remember a few years ago, I used to tell my wife, "Why don't you just like write your notes on your computer, type it up?" And she's like, "No, I like to write it so I can remember things." Right?
Yes.
So this line of everything you love about paper in a digital notebook, it gives you that sense of people who are kind of like on the fence of whether they should move to something digital. Like they still get all the value and all the same kind of benefits of writing it down. But now it's just digitized, right? And just makes it a little bit better.
Yeah. What's standing out to me, and this is just per the language that they used, it's immediately tapping into the emotion of joy. So that's what's, I think is working really well with their messaging, is that it's joyful and it's causing me to make that association with their product. Like, oh, this is going to be a joyful product experience. So kudos there. What do you think the PMM could have done differently?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked a little bit about like the hero and like it's very product centric. So is it relevant to everyone? The event stuff.
Yeah.
But there was two things that stood out to me. Like right after the hero, they have this. I noticed this buyer's guide thing. And so I clicked on that, and it kind of fell short to me. Like to me, it felt like a really great opportunity, especially if they have multiple products, to really help the buyer understand like which product is the right one for them.
Yeah.
And I don't think it really hit that. In terms of like, I was trying, like, there's a place that you can click on things, but it doesn't change anything. So I felt like that kind of fell short in terms of what my expectations were for that. But the other one big thing, like, was two things, but kind of connected. They have this whole section below of like connect subscription, right? So they have some type of subscription that you can add on. I didn't really get a clear sense of like what that means necessarily. Like, what is that? What is connect? What am I getting out of it?
Yeah.
And related to that, the big question I have, and I'm a customer, I use it, I still haven't gone and figured out if this is possible. But the thing I really want to see is like I write these notes, it somehow digitizes them and makes them searchable, right? Like that would be like really powerful to me, right? Because
I just assumed that would be part of it. What? Like,
yeah, well, there probably is a way. I don't know if it's part of this whole Connect subscription or if I do. I know when I first started using this thing a few years ago, that was not possible. Like you can send the digitized version, like PDFs to yourself, but it doesn't like change your writing into text where it can search across it, right? And so maybe it does it now. But like that is very important. That I feel like they're missing the opportunity to like talk about that, right? Especially because they talk so much about like organization and managing things and finding ways to like keep things in order.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't necessarily touch on the idea of taking handwriting and digitizing it into like, in a way that's searchable.
Right. Yeah. That could be a power feature that they could tap into. Yeah. And whether they have that feature or not, it sounds like they could either bubble it up or maybe, hey, add it to the roadmap. Okay, we might be kind of getting into this conversation already, but how would you iterate on this from a messaging, storytelling standpoint, or like maybe what are some creative ideas that you have for the PMM?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously that one I just mentioned, like just making sure like what are some of the clear, not even roadblocks, but features that people would have expect from this, right? To your point, you said you expected it to already be part of that, right? And so you would potentially purchase this thing and then realize after the fact that you can't actually do that, right? Or maybe you can, it's just not easy to figure out. So like just making sure those things are more clear and upfront. I don't know. I mean, I think like to me, again, I do enjoy like the visuals and how they try to bring it more to life. I think where they could really probably put a little bit more emphasis on is like this whole idea that I already said of like everything you love about paper in a digital book. Like, again, to me, that feels like probably the largest roadblock to people buying. Like, they love the
Yes.
the process and the experience of writing on paper, right? And this one sentence does a good job of like, starting that conversation.
It does,
But
yeah.
can they expand on that more, right? That's where I would probably focus.
I was going to say the same thing. And I think they've done a really good job with like sparking some of that joy and to double down on that. And I don't, typically I say sell the pain. I don't know if I would do that here. I think this is an exception where I wouldn't sell the pain and I would sell the joy. And this is more like less of feedback for product marketing. So maybe I'm not super qualified to give this feedback, but like some of the images that they have with the customers, like they're a little flat. It kind of doesn't match the joy that I would expect to have. They do like they would, it would show what you can do, and that's really cool. But I think maybe there's something there around storytelling with the joy of everything you love about paper, but like in digital. So I'd love to see more of that. It would be really fun to do a campaign around that. I'm sure if we could get our hands on some of their customer data, I'm sure we'd have lots of ideas on
Sure.
content we could do.
But even talking about your idea of like pain, right? And you're obviously saying maybe not lean into the pain part, but the thing that got me to finally make the purchase is the fact that I had all these notebooks that were trying to pile up, and I am one of those weird people that I don't like to throw away those notebooks.
Oh, me
right?
too.
Not
Oh my
that I'm
gosh.
ever gonna go look at them again, but you assume maybe you do, right? And so like, is there something
have
there that
them.
you can tug on?
I have them from the last 15 years. And
Yeah.
it's like, I can't throw them away. Because like, what if there's something in there that like is like a nugget of information? No, I think you're right. But you could do that in like still a joyful way, not in the pain. So, yeah. I would love
I
to
agree.
just brainstorm with their marketing team on that. Okay, so thank you so much for walking us through such a fun critique, and shout out to any remarkable PMMs out there. We really like where you're going with the emotion and would love to see more. Okay, so Anand, one thing that I like to make time for is a moment of gratitude on this podcast, because in product marketing, we never get anywhere alone. We're always building on each other and learning from each other. So first and foremost, thank you for your time today. And I know it was a lot of work to prep for this session and share your expertise. So just want to wrap up and say thank you for everything that you've done for us.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Ellen. I really appreciate it. It's been a fun conversation.
Yeah. And just a quick shout out, just put some good kudos out in the world.
Sure.
Turning it over to you, who are some PMMs that you've worked hand in hand with who have made an impact on your career and molded you into the awesome PMM that you are today?
Yeah, so I have a couple people I'll quickly give shout outs to. So first is like, maybe not as much PMM, but like my managers, right? So Melissa Paulet, when I joined PaySafe, she was the first time I realized like managers play an important role in your career development. Like I had not really had great managers prior to that. And like I got to see it firsthand, like how important a good manager is to your growth as an individual. So ever since then, like that's been a big factor in my decisions to when I'm looking for new jobs. And then similarly, when I was at TeamSnap, Desiree Jewell joined our team as to lead our marketing team, and she had a product marketing background, but she was taking a more expansive head of marketing role at that point. But the way that she just had like the ability to connect with people and really have empathy for everyone on the team and like the human side of managing, like I really appreciate that. I try to replicate that. I'm not as good at it as she is, but like that's something that I have always appreciated. And then on the product marketing side, like I've worked with some great product marketers, but I've also worked for small organizations, so there wasn't as many of us, right?
Yeah, get it.
And so I've had to tap into other people, and so I've been fortunate enough to work with some folks you probably heard of, like Julian Savage, Jam Khan, Daniel Cooperman. Of like they've just been so willing to like have conversations and chat and like hear ideas and kind of bounce things back and forth. Like they're like. These are well-known people. They have busy things going on in their lives, working for great brands. But the fact that they were so open to have conversations, and not just once, but like we've continued to have like a strong relationship, I'm always thankful for that because it allows you to feel like you're not alone in this thing, and you're talking to other people and getting validation and feedback and continuing to like feel good about the work you're doing because other people will kind of see been in your place and see what you're going through.
I love that about product marketing. It feels like for the most part, everybody in our community is so willing to share feedback and mentor. Yeah, and I couldn't feel more similar to you in terms of you get that one experience of an amazing manager. And same, I will not that is my make or break decision on any career, anywhere I go work.
Correct.
If the manager isn't amazing, it's a pass.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, I promise this is my last question for you. Where else can we access your expertise? Is it best to find you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place. I'm on Twitter/X, but I don't talk about marketing there as much anymore. So I'm not on there as much. So LinkedIn is definitely the best place to catch me.
Awesome. Oh, well, again, thank you so much, Anand. It's been a really fun conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Sal. I really appreciate you having me.
And thank you, PMM listeners, for coming on this adventure with us today. I hope this episode leaves you with inspiration to take in the next step of your own journey.